I'm Baker again for Conspiracy Crush podcast YouTube channel. This one I am going to dive into media bias. So I'll try to make it quick and I'll try to do less umming and ahhing. I'm trying to work on that stuff. Still getting used to this new forum. There I go again. So in any case, media bias. In order to believe that everything that you see in the West in the free press is bias from the mainstream media, you must believe that there are dozens and dozens of reporters and editors in dozens of different outlets in dozens of different jurisdictions around the United States and Britain and Canada and Australia and European countries, that they are all on the take, that they are all bought off, that all of these journalists that have dedicated their lives to telling stories and telling the truth and having integrity and helping their communities because they love their country and they love their family and hope for the best for the future. All these people, of course, there's 3% that are psychopaths. We all know that. But the vast majority of them are good people, that they would all sell their soul for, I guess, some money. I mean, and that doesn't even make sense, because it's the digital age. Imagine if Jake Tapper said, the executives at CNN want me to cover this up, but I'm not doing it. He'd be a huge celebrity still. He would still have a huge presence online. I mean, look what, I think that Tucker is an evil piece of crap. But he's still doing pretty good. Right? I mean, so these whistleblowers, all these people being in on something is absurd. It can't happen. These are people independent out there looking at the same stuff and reporting it. Saying that because there are similarities in the reporting is proof, which I've heard on Twitter, that they're all getting their marching orders from the same people is absurd. If they're all covering the same event, they're covering the same fact pattern, which means they're going to be saying roughly the same things if they're telling the truth. That's how you know they're telling the truth, because there can't be coordination between so many people in real time. It's absurd. It's like saying reporters covering a game are because, when Joe gets the touchdown, every outlet and every reporter covering the game says, Joe got a touchdown. Oh, man, that touchdown must be bull, because they're all saying it at the same time. What? It's totally absurd. Totally absurd. But that never stops. It never stops people who want to believe or justify what they've believed for so long because they've invested themselves in the lie. It's not going to change their minds, trust me. They ignore common sense arguments all the time online when I'm dealing with arguing with folks. So anyways, to the meat and potatoes of this, I want to go through a couple of videos that came up. Here we go.
Unfortunately, some members of the media
use their platforms
to push their own personal bias.
and agenda to control exactly what people think. This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
Some members of the media
All right. So
use their platforms
To push
there
their
it
own
is,
personal
right?
bias.
to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
So, media shouldn't tell you what to think, is what they're suggesting here. Okay, yeah, let's remember that. So, here's a good, they're trying to imply because everybody's saying the same thing in unison that they must all be getting the same marching orders. Certainly that was the implication of why it was shared with me. So that's part of the reason I jumped on that. But I'm going to move on from this right now and maybe come back to it because this is really something. This is really rich. I gotta say, this is really, really rich for them to be putting this on, conservatives especially, to be putting this out there as proof of media bias, I gotta tell you.
The white nationalists and neo-Nazi marchers in Charlottesville chanting that Jews will not replace us, but their words, blood and soil. Jews will not replace us. Blood and soil was a Nazi slogan, Blut und Boden. Now, most people watching that would be outraged. The former president said this.
They showed up in Charlottesville.
Excuse me.
To protest.
Excuse me. They didn't put themselves down as you, and you had some very bad people in that group. But you also had people that were very fine people on both sides.
Very fine people among Americans that night chanting Nazi slogans.
And you had people, and I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally. But you had many people in that group other than neo-Nazis and white nationalists, okay?
Very fine people among Americans that night chanting Nazi slogans.
And I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally.
All right, so yeah, so I've been hearing this a lot whenever I talk about anything that Trump says. They always kind of come back to this as the ultimate proof that the media is biased toward Trump and that they take him out of context and manipulate his words. So once again, I focus on common sense and logic. I just want to ask you one thing. If you are in that camp that think Trump is wrong done by, if I'm marching with a Nazi, what am I? I'll give you a minute. If I'm marching with Nazis, and they're obviously Nazis, if I'm marching with them, what am I? Am I a very good person? This is the point, right? I mean, Trump likes to pretend he manufactures a reality where you can have it both ways. It's like, oh, yeah, the neo-Nazis and white nationalists, they're obviously horrible, but there's fine people there, too. Sounds reasonable, but no. They're marching with Nazis. They support Nazi ideology, which means they support hate, extremism, God knows what to do with the Jews. That's what they support. They're not fine people. You can't pretend like you can have it both ways. It's bullshit. And that's what always happens with Trump. It's always the same. So Trump knows exactly what he's doing. And in terms of this video, in terms of what he said, all you got to do is watch how the Nazis and the KKK and the white nationalists reacted. Celebration. They partied it up. The president's on our side, finally. Give me a break. This kind of stuff is insane. And this is proof that the media is biased? No, this is proof that the media is doing its job. They're not just accepting the spin of some politician that pretends like you can have it both ways. If I'm marching with Nazis, what am I? I'm a fucking Nazi. Period. Full stop. This is bullshit.
Unfortunately, some members of the media
use their platforms
to push their own personal bias.
See what I'm talking about?
personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. This is extremely
Who's pushing the agenda here, guys? Who's pushing the agenda? The media is telling you what happened and putting it into the context of the event. Anderson Cooper wasn't telling you what happened. The worst he said is very fine people on both sides. Yeah, he's got a little bias there. Can't say I blame him. But he didn't say to you, Trump's a racist piece of crap that you need to never vote for. Give me a break. It's not bias. It's just being a human. So, and like I said, we'll keep coming back to this, but this is the next thing. So for you people watching outside of Canada, this is still going to be relevant to you because you're going to be dealing with this kind of stuff yourself. And of course, it's the conservatives who are doing this, despite being the ones that are all, freedom this and freedom that. Freedom, as long as I'm free to say F you to your rights. Yeah, that's the kind of freedom I want. As long as I'm right and you're wrong and media says it, they're not biased. So in Canada here, this is, if you're watching this at a later time, this is roughly a week after the Hamas terrorist attack in Jerusalem, or in Israel. So lots of controversy around this, how to report it. The local media, Canadian media, CBC, CTV, have stopped calling the Hamas terrorists. I call them terrorists because I think that's what they are. But they started calling them Hamas militants. because if you recall, there has been a lot of protests on the street in support of Palestine and Palestinian freedom. Totally get it. What a shit show over there. I think Bibi should go to jail for everything he's done before, during, and after this crisis. See if time plays that out. But my point here is the conservative MPs want to bring CBC executives before the Commons Committee over terrorism language. So CTV, CBC, they stopped calling them terrorists. They started calling them Hamas militants. And this is about, you guessed it,
Unfortunately, some members of the media
Some members of the media
use their platforms to push their own personal bias.
To push their own personal bias and agenda to control.
that's bad. Yeah, that's bad.
Extremely dangerous to our democracy.
Oh yes, that is so bad. Oh, very, very bad. Well, guess what? This is exactly what the conservatives are doing. They want to push their bias. And when their bias is not pushed, that is bias. It's bass ackwards. Bass ackwards. Which they started calling the Hamas militants because some people see them as freedom fighters. So they're not telling you what to think, they are telling you what happened. That is objective journalism. Now, these days with online media, so many people have come to think that if they are not reflecting your bias, it is bias. It's insane. I mean, here's an alternative news site. There's a freaking conservative ad right there. All they do is trash Trudeau. So this is your non-propaganda objective media? This is what you listen to? How many out there have come to believe that if it's not reflecting your bias, it must be bias? It is insane. It is insane. And these are the ones that I get videos like this from.
Some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias.
To push their own
That's bad.
personal bias and agenda to control.
Yeah, that's bad. Oh, bad.
It's extremely dangerous to our democracy.
Yes, it is extremely dangerous to our democracy. You hypocritical bullshit. Anyway, that is what's going on. Yeah, that is what's happening with media. So I'll close it out there. I'm not sure how long I went. I went a bit off the rails, but hopefully you'll understand. I go online. I do this because it feels like if I'm not working a problem, I get anxious, and at least this way I feel like I'm doing something. So I hope you get some arguments out of this that you can use online against the crazy that you're bumping into out there. But for now, I'll sign off. This was the little media bias segment. I'm certainly going to end up doing one again and reinforcing some of this stuff. But if you want to support me, I really appreciate that. Follows, subscribes, that's fantastic. Could certainly use the help. And thanks for watching. I'll see you guys again. Thank you.
This is the Newsload.